So I'm starting to put together my art portfolio and it is nowhere near ready, but while looking through all of my old artwork trying to determine what I could put in, I came across this, which is an old piece I did many years ago, thanks to my dad, who said, "Hey, I have this giant thing of cardboard, why don't you put a bunch of skulls on it?" So I did, and I saw this and I thought it would be really cool to do something of a similar nature to put in my portfolio, only with watercolor, and I really like skulls, so I ended up creating this, and that's the origin story of today's piece. So let's get started. Woo! Hello my lovelies, and welcome to another video. So I've already explained the origin of the main ideas behind this piece, so for the rest of this voiceover I'm going to be discussing a more emotional topic, which is art block. And depending or not if I ramble for the entire video, I might let you know a bit into why I chose to do the color green, because believe it or not, that was a very complicated process, but let's just get started with the personal baggage, shall we? Today's topic is art block, and more primarily, how to deal with said art block. Creative block is an old friend of mine. I get hit with it, and I get hit hard. Every creative aspect of my life just gets ground to a halt. My writing, I can't for the life of me write anything, and I'm still struggling with that right now. I cannot draw anything. I get this guilt complex, or just think that nothing I'm making is worthy enough for my YouTube channel, so more often than not, videos that I spend hours making don't ever get published, and it gets to the point where I question my place in the universe and all that stuff. Regardless, it's just bad. It really sucks. Now, just general fun creativity block. Yay! The most recent episode of this, I believe it started after I came back from my trip to New Orleans. There, I spent about a month working at the tattoo shop my uncle works at, and it was a really fun, really educational experience, and I am not trying to diss on it at all. I was so lucky and so privileged to be in that atmosphere. I learned so much about tattoo culture, handling customers, and I now know how to use an autoclave, which is really fun. But when I came back home, all of a sudden, all of my creative energies were just dead. I just cannot for the life of me write anything, and I just felt such a heavy sense of dread whenever I looked at my sketchbook. And it sucks because, I still like to draw, and I felt so obligated to keep pushing my work and keep creating and stuff, but I just couldn't do it. So I didn't. And that's where the problem kind of lies. I think we artists, and I think this applies for everyone, not just artists, not even creatives, though this is something that we deal with a lot, just anything in general. Sometimes you fall out of it, or you get block of some kind. You keep trying to force yourself to perform at the highest level that you possibly can, but you can't. And that kind of creates a negative feedback loop where you're like, I can't do it, but I need to, and you try to do it, but it's not at the level you want it to be at, so it discourages you from continuing to do it, and that repeats over and over again. And it's really nasty, but, that's life for you. So that's what I went through for a bit, but eventually I just, through sheer iron will and grit, I crawled out of that oozing cesspit that is creative block, and here's how I did it. If there's only one thing you take away from this entire video, I want it to be this. Baby steps. Start at the very basic level, doing the smallest little things, or you can even just try a new thing entirely. For example, like digital art. That's how I primarily focused on. I'm very new to the medium, as you probably know, and I was very much aware of this fact as well, so I turned to my tablet more and very slowly, because, you know, starting from a place of just no creativity at all, I just followed a lot of online tutorials and whatnot, and just slowly built up my digital revenue. And that's a key thing. That's what I keep trying to reiterate. I don't really know how to put this into words, and I'm probably kicking a dead horse, but you just take it easy on yourself. Be aware that this isn't entirely something that needs to be just forced upon your shoulders. You can't expect an athlete who has spent the past couple weeks in a leg cast to just immediately run a 50K, because, you know, they haven't been stretching those muscles. So you can't force yourself to go from 0 to 100%. That's just impossible. So keep that in mind when you're trying to get back to whatever medium you are taking a break from. And that is also important. You might also just need a break, though this is primarily focusing on how to get away from the break. So, you know, just go at your own pace, go slow. Don't feed into that guilt. Don't let it get to you. And believe me, it is so hard to fight it. But you can. I started very slow. I could not face my sketchbook, so instead I turned to my tablet, which, as I've stated before, was a pretty new medium to me. It's still really new to me. Like, Procreate is really different from traditional watercolor or even drawing, just digital art compared to traditional blah-de-blah-de-blah. And I think that was a very important thing, because going into it, I had less pressure on myself because I knew I was new to it. I knew I was learning. So instead of just trying to come up with these really brilliant ideas, I instead followed a bunch of online tutorials on how to improve my digital abilities. And I think that's a key point. Just go back to the basics and just grow in confidence of your own abilities. Just slowly rebuild yourself and your ability, and eventually you will be able to take tiny steps towards the bigger fish, the bigger projects. And in my case, that was the baby octopus video. So that was a pretty big milestone for me, because up until then, I was only doing like a single brush technique like once every other couple of days. So that was a pretty big milestone for me. So yeah, when I uploaded that video, I thought I was out of the frying pan, but I was not, because I very soon realized that I was overlooking another part of my block entirely, and that was traditional medium, primarily watercolor, which even before going to New Orleans, I was kind of not doing it as much. That probably was because I was focusing more on my digital medium or whatever, but then I didn't really have, or I didn't make time for it while I was in New Orleans, and then coming back home, the artist block, blah-de-blah. Regardless, at that point, I had not touched my paintbrushes in almost 2-3 months. And I realized that, and I decided, okay, I need to start taking steps towards this little hurdle now. And that was definitely a big challenge. So about a month of this process, just slowly getting out of my rut, I kept on making all of these different line works pieces that I wanted to do, but I just always fell short and fell out of it because reasons. Block. I fell out of passion with the project, and that's a pretty big hurdle for me. I very quickly get attached to an idea, and I go full speed ahead, but then 3/4 into the project, I dive bomb down, and it gets bad, and I oftentimes just drop the project altogether. So I needed to get through that. But when it came to this skull piece, it was a very different scenario. Maybe it was because I haven't painted for so long, but when I finally started mixing up my paints, I was getting really excited. I was feeling really giddy because it had just been so long since I painted anything, and now all of a sudden I just got that euphoric rush of excitement of like, ah yes, this is why I like painting, because it's fun. And that's not what I usually experience when I go to paint. Normally I feel very nervous, or I keep second questioning what I'm doing because I'm still not very good at my color selections and color uses, so I oftentimes finish something, look at it, and I feel that I could have done it a whole lot differently, just feeling all these guilt and whatnot. But it was the exact opposite when I was working on these skulls. Even when it was going through the ugly painting process, I kept telling myself, this is just part of the process, this is going to be really good. And I don't care that I'm patting myself on the back, because damn, it turned out really good. I think this is probably my favorite piece up to date. I definitely might want to frame it later, or whatever. I don't know, damn, I was not expecting to get emotional in this video. I'm actually about to cry. Yeah, like, that's where I am right now, and all that stuff. Thanks for listening. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So, like I said, what I want for you to take away, my dear, dear listeners, and all of you creatives out there, yes, it is good to put some pressure on yourself, because you need a level of accountability in order to produce at an actually productive level. But don't put so much pressure on yourself that you crack under it, because if you make your expectations way too high, or you force yourself to produce at an extremely high threshold, then that's going to make you burn out a lot faster. And if you do end up in a burnout situation, it's just going to make you stay in that miserable state for much, much longer. And if you do end up in that kind of situation, don't blame yourself. Try not to feel that level of guilt and take it easy on yourself. Just slowly piece yourself back together and you'll get to where you were eventually. In fact, you'll probably get a lot better after that, if you think about it. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. A big shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are the best. Thanks for all of your support. And everyone, be safe out there. I love you guys. Have a great day. Stay tuned for the next video. Bye. Cat, I know what you're going to do. Don't do it. Don't do it. No. You stay there. You stay there. No. No. She has 2 times now jumped into my paint. And she made a stain on the floor. Got my eye on you. She did it! She did it! The second I turned off the camera, she...